We're here to solve this Kuromasu puzzle by Prasanna Seshadri. We haven't had as many Kuromasu recently, but it's a good shading style and it has a lot of logic. It goes sort of like this, where sometimes because the cells around a shaded cell are both seen together, you'll be thinking about those kitty corner cells for logic. But that would be if we had twos in the grid as the way we start. I actually don't see any twos. I see 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think that explains the missing 5 theme. There's a series of intermediate size numbers, but not the number 5. A lot of these are similarly valued or close. The two most interesting values to me are this 10 and 4. They look to be in a column, but we couldn't have all 3 of these cells between them seen, because then the 4 would actually see 5 cells. So there is an edge somewhere between these. We don't know for sure, but let's sort of do a maximum count. Let's say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So for sure these cells in green are used. And coming still then back across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. These cells are used. And so this is a forcing just based on the going left and right. Now we have a case where, because the 10 and the 9 see each other, the 10 is always going to see one more cell, so vertically it's going to take one more. And there's a case where the black cell will have to be just below one of these, just below the other one, but one row shifted higher. And so we'll be able to think through that. Let's come back now to the second row, where this 3 coming across can't take both of the cells and get all the way over to this green that it's seeing. So there's going to be a blackened cell in one of those 2 cells that we'll want to work through. We've got to consider if the top row has any cell shaded, and if it has no cell shaded, then this 9 is going to be a problem. But notice that if it has some cell shaded, it has to have 2 cells shaded, because this is an even rows and columns constraint puzzle. So it has to have this cell shaded and has to have one of these shaded, either this one or this one. And that's just going to be a constraint from the puzzle itself, the even odd rows constraint. If it were this corner cell, it's going to actually force these cells to quickly get shaded around it. And notice that that has the 10 seeing a total of 8. If it were not that, and it were shading this, then we'd have the 10 seeing 7, and the 10 would have to go all the way through. So the 10 has to see 8 as a minimum. It sees 2 more in the column. The 9 sees 1 more in the column. We've talked through that. Marking the cells around the 3, the 3 is fully satisfied and has to come in like this. This row needs to have another shaded cell in it, but notice this third row cannot, so this cell has to be unshaded because there are already 2 in the space. And so that now limits where the 7 can see cells. It can't see the cell above it. It must see the cell below it. Those look good and all forced. We'll mark these green cells in. This 9 currently sees 9 cells, so we can mark off the last. This 4 sees 2 cells, needs 2 more to get to 4. We'll again shade around the cells we've marked in. This 9 sees 6, 7, 8, 9, so all the border cells around it can now be marked. This is how, in these kinds of puzzles, when you get a starting seed, you make a lot of progress. This column with these 2 cells in it has only 1 more cell I could place, and so those actually can't be shaded, because we have to have an even number in the column. I now have 6 around those 8 clues, so I put in 2 more to get to 8, shade off the last. This 4 is seeing 3 cells, so it can't take this cell or that cell, will get too large. This column needs to have 1 more shaded, so it's got the even odd constraint fulfilled. This 8 then has to see as many as 8 cells coming across, and that will have to take at least to here, but it also can't have the whole row without shaded cells. So just like the top had these corner cells come in, at this stage of the puzzle, looks like I can mark this requirement, and with this 8 seeing all the cells to its right, it can't see any more of the top, so we mark these cells in. This row has 3 cells shaded, needs another. This cell has 2 shaded, it's fine to stay that way. The 6 needs to see another cell. 2 cells shaded in this row, we can't put in more than 1, that would be an odd. We could do more shading here, but let's actually go vertically. This column has 1 extra cell, but needs to stay even, needs to stay even. This column has 2, needs to stay even. 2 needs to stay even. We now have the case where we've got to put in at least 1 more shaded cell on this right space, and only 1. And we could place 2 over here. If we placed 2, we could do another here, but we'd isolate off this cell. And so when we mark the for connectivity, we've got to put 1 more in here. We're now going to mark this isn't usable, these aren't usable. We've got one last cell we could place, and that finishes out the grid. So if you haven't solved Kuromasu for a while, again, thinking about how placements force shadings nearby or unshadings nearby is really key in this puzzle. We took the connections between clues as 10 and 4 staying separate to get the 10 to connect with the 9, and then those work together where one is going to be a little longer than the other. And at the end of this puzzle, the connection of all the unshaded cells together was the last forcing step. That when we have this open, we have to mark this unused so that we don't isolate the cell down here. So challenging puzzle, hopefully a fun reintroduction to Kuromasu, and we'll see you again soon.